All right, welcome back. You're watching a Friday edition of Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. I'm John Tobacco, and every Friday I'm joined by my good friend Michael Johns. He's one of the co-founders of the Tea Party movement. He's a policy analyst, former speechwriter for George H.W. Bush. This guy knows where the rubber meets the road and where the bodies are buried on the road to changing the political temperature in this country, which he did with his compatriots in the Tea Party movement. Mike, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. We got a lot to talk about today. Put aside two segments because I think personally, and I've been trying to do it on this show, but I don't think Donald Trump right till now has come up with a concise closing argument. And I think the argument is economy, cops, no more lockdowns, kids back to school, America's great. I don't know what you think, and you have a way better handle on this stuff, but how would you paint the final picture for the closing argument for Donald Trump?
The economy is showing up repeatedly as the single greatest issue that the voters are confronting and that they're considering as it relates to how they cast their votes. I think that's generally incredibly great news because simultaneously, when you look at polling, you see repeatedly that a large percentage, well over 50%, feel that President Trump is better suited to manage the economy than Biden. Which sort of raises the question of can you have a dual categorization here of individuals who feel Trump is best positioned to manage the economy and yet cast a ballot for Biden? I really don't think so. I think there's a lot of things that are trending very positively for the president. His messaging has of course been complicated, and I think your point's well taken in the sense that no one anticipated that we would have these two issues that have been so predominant in 2020 in the pandemic and in the street riots. But I think you're going to have a lot of Americans who still remember the first 3 years of this administration as being almost unequivocally successful in every respect. And then as it relates to these two issues of 2020, let's point the fingers where they deserve. The pandemic came from China. Emerging evidence shows that Joe Biden is deep in some pretty terrifying business deals with the Chinese Communist Party and likely will not hold them accountable, whereas President Trump will and has promised he will. And the street riots, look, I mean, these were mayors, all Democrats, supported by very far left foundations and philanthropic sources that basically have used their citizens as pawns for political purposes, and that's complicated the political climate. But I believe when the American people look at these two things, they don't believe that the federal government, if they understand it completely, has mismanaged this pandemic at all. Trump has saved a lot of lives. China has to be held accountable for the rest of this, and the street riots and pandemic ultimately, again, lie on these mayors that are Democrats that Biden has not condemned and is not, basically called upon to stop this violence. So I think it's a real issue. I think that's a real issue. But I do believe we're at a point right now where the American people need to kind of take a fresh look at the accomplishments of the administration, and they're significant.
I think Donald Trump, they say these rallies, and, it's very calculated, Mike, what they've been doing. If you look at the counties they're going to in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota, even Pennsylvania, most of those rallies are right on the border of the other state, so they draw from, a larger pair of states, and the rallies have been huge. But at the same time, there's a pattern of the rallies have been in districts that Hillary Clinton won. So he's having the rally in districts that he lost, but they're usually surrounded in contiguous districts that he won them all. So I really think he's trying to drum up the base to get the enthusiasm, but he's really talking to those middle-of-the-road Democrats and those independents. And I feel like the one argument he's making to those folks is, look at what I've done for the minority communities, and you see little green shoots here when you see guys coming out of the rap community left and right saying we're going for Trump. I feel like he's making an impact with minorities in a big way.
Well, and why wouldn't he? I mean, when you look at the accomplishments that he's had, I mean, he put more focus on the plight of African Americans and in addressing those issues. Obama ran on them in some respects in 2008 and then forgot about the whole constituency for eight consecutive years. Had the lowest unemployment of African Americans in the history of this country on Donald Trump's watch. Wages beginning to rise in that community where they hadn't been rising. The funding of the traditionally black colleges and universities, and importantly, the First Step Act, which was the first time really any president in modern times has addressed the fact that Joe Biden's crime bills of the 90s have locked up a considerable number of African Americans, many on nonviolent crimes that had decimated these families and kind of had a ripple effect throughout these communities. So when you look at like what is the founding dilemma that's confronted them, you take a father out of a household for a decade and incarcerate him. You've created a whole series of problems. Kids growing up without their dads, without income, creating a cycle of poverty and sometimes a cycle of crime. So this president's done a lot for the African American community, and I'm going to predict he's going to obtain more votes than any Republican, in modern times from that community. And this time he's deserving of it.
So, by all accounts, I think they're saying Donald Trump got like 8 to 10% of the African American vote in the last election, which was an increase from Mitt Romney in 2012. Yep. Give me a prediction. What percent of the African American community you think Trump will get?
I mean, I've seen favorable numbers that have had him like up in the 40s, which is incredible. Clearly, if he can secure over 20%, would be an extraordinary accomplishment. I think he's deserving of more than that. And a lot of this continues to be, messaging and getting rid of some of these stigmas that the left has been successful in attaching to Republican parties. But Donald Trump's done a lot for the African American community, and I think the Hispanic community too, if you want to look at it that way. Especially Venezuelans and Cubans who experienced the horrors of communism, look at this president and see him as being someone who's glued into the reality, both at home and abroad, of the threat that it represents, and they too are going to be inclined, I think, to be supportive of him.
So, Mike, I know, by all account, when you say, he can get as high as 40, I saw some of these polls that were saying he can get that high with African American males. I don't know if that was on the whole African American community, but I want to tell you this. I was down in Miami last year for the Democratic debates when they first started for the primary debates. And I was going into a lot of shops.
My alma mater, the U.
Yeah, and I was going into a lot of the local shops where there are, Hispanic, Latino, Cuban folks, and I thought I would get a different reception with some Trump gear on, but I was shocked at how the Miami community was totally for Trump. And I started asking people about it, and like an older man who worked in a store, I just started talking to him. He said, the people don't realize that, even though we migrated here, we have family values. We are conservative. We go to church. We don't believe this stuff about the wall. And I have not doubted Florida since then. But people are saying, all the left wing is saying Maine, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Donald Trump's trailing in all three of them. I don't tend to believe that.
No, they were wrong in 2016. There's plenty of reason to believe they're wrong this time too. There's clearly an oversampling of Democrats. There's oversampling of suburban Republicans at the expense of rural Republicans, and you have the silent Trump participant who either doesn't want to participate in these polls or tells the pollster what they're inclined to want to hear. So is the professional polling dead in the Trump era? I think should Trump be reelected on Tuesday, which obviously I'm extremely hoping will be the case. I think we're going to have a whole reevaluation of this whole thing because what's happened basically is simultaneous to the media losing its credibility. Polling agencies affiliated with those media outlets have lost credibility, and whether it's a product of their sampling methodologies or a product maybe of institutional bias that's reflected in their reporting, it's obviously problematic.
No doubt. Hey, Mike, all right.
The news story, it's like everyone's talking about the polls, and we really should be talking about who's better to represent this country over the next 4 years.
No doubt. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Breaking news out of Politico that they got to stop the bleeding in Florida. We'll break that down with Michael Johns right after this.